to the Coast Guard booth. We are here again with our special series, Candid Conversations with Coast Guard Senior Leaders. And we are extremely honored to have back in the booth today the Deputy Commandant for Mission Support, Paul F. Thomas, and CMC Pereira, who is our DCMS CMC. So a little bit about Vice Admiral Thomas and CMC Pereira. Vice Admiral Thomas assumed duties as Deputy Commandant for Mission Support in June 2021. As DCMS, Vice Admiral Thomas leads the 17,000-person organization that delivers the systems and people that enable the U.S. Coast Guard to efficiently and effectively perform its operational missions. Vice Admiral Thomas is responsible for all facets of support for the Coast Guard's diverse mission set through oversight of human capital, life cycle engineering and logistics, acquisitions, information technology, and security. CMC Pereira's primary responsibility is to advise DCMS on personnel policy impacts pertaining to the Coast Guard missions, programs, and services. And following the interview by Ms. Loretta Herring, who is our former journalist and reporter and current communications manager in the acquisition directorate, they'll be taking questions from the audience, so stick around.
I'd like to thank you both for being here, and we'll get right into the questions. During the State of the Coast Guard address, Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Linda Fagan said, "Our recruiting shortfall threatens our readiness and ability to serve the American people. There have been even cases where our major cutters are sailing without the full complement of crew members. We've had some successful efforts recently to try to mitigate this problem, but there still is an issue. What do you think is the root of the issue, and what steps is the Coast Guard and Mission Support taking to address these challenges?"
All right, well, first, thanks for the opportunity to be here, and thank you all for stopping by the Coast Guard booth. You heard it this morning from all the service chiefs. Every single one of them said the number one priority is workforce, and our number one threat to our service is workforce gaps. I don't know the root cause of why across the services, across industries, we have a workforce shortage right now, and it's not just in the U.S. Our colleagues across the world, our partners and allies, are experiencing similar challenges. I would say, though, for the Coast Guard, the root cause is our brand just isn't known. In fact, there's a lot of research that shows, about 6 to 8% of the population that's eligible to serve is propense to serve, but there's a certain percentage of those who are not in that 6 to 8% who would be serving in the Coast Guard if they knew about us. So that is where we are focused. Well, two places. We're focused on increasing our recruiting capacity and getting our brand out there, as well as, more importantly, probably is retention. But let me ask Master Chief your thoughts on where we are with recruiting.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. So when I'm thinking about that question, especially recruiting, we have never been as intentional with recruiting as we are right now, because we have to be. We used to be very selective. We're not as selective anymore as far as waiting for anybody to come to see us. We're actively seeking everybody out to try to fill our ranks. And it's interesting because out of the propensity of folks that are able to serve, we're getting some amazing folks. And to Admiral's point, we do a horrible job telling our story because we're just those silent professionals, right? We're just doing the job and getting it done every day. So it's pretty cool to see the folks that are coming in now. I don't know how they heard about us, but we are focused on making sure that more and more of us are telling our story and we're getting after it in a better way. So thanks for that.
All right. Now, this is, of course, an industry show, so we're going to move to technology. In President Biden's national security strategy, he states the United States must prevail in competition with the People's Republic of China by outcompeting them in the technological, economic, political, military, intelligence, and global governance domains. So let's focus on technology. How would you say the Coast Guard is doing at implementing, advancing, and new technologies And what steps need to be taken to make that process easier?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Obviously, a show like this is a great place to talk about all the technologies that are out there to leverage. It's all about mission, and it's all about performing that mission the most effective way possible. You probably recall our last Commandant, Admiral Schultz, set the service on a track for what we call the technology revolution. Our current Commandant doubled down on that, and we're in Tech Rev version 2.0. You know, she understands we need a world-class workforce, but we need world-class tools in their hands, and that's what she means when she says sharpen our competitive edge. So we are continuing to field new technologies that help us with cutter connectivity, that help us with enhanced learning opportunities, that help us with cybersecurity and cyber operations, better infrastructure that's more reliable, redundant, repeatable, all those things. I think the biggest challenge that we have, that all the services have, that we can use your help with, is life cycle management of these technologies. There is no question that by the time we are done fielding the technology in a 5-year period across the service, it's obsolete. And so we never have an opportunity to hand it off from acquisition to sustainment. We have to be in a continuous acquisition period. And one of the primary milestones in our mission support action plan for the next 4 years is to modernize the way that we manage life cycle, particularly of C5I, because we cannot do it the way that we've been doing it. And I got a team looking hard at that, and that's really where we can use your help. But let me ask the Master Chief what he thinks about in terms of getting technology in the hands of our crews.
Thank you, sir. So we've been focused on not just the tech revolution, but increasing tech connectivity across the board, especially with a lot of our cutters. And the feedback I'm getting from the field is they love it. They love being able to finally connect when they're away, 6 months away from their home, to be able to FaceTime every once in a while with their family. So that's making a huge difference for our folks, and increasing that technological refresh rate that we talked about. It's going to be a game changer for us. And because we're so small, and it's kind of heard this phrase once, it's expensive to be poor. And so we absolutely have to continue to leverage where we can, piggyback off of things that our DoD brothers and sisters are already have paved the way for, and see what we could piggyback on, and then getting other things in place where it makes that refresh rate easier, right? Because right now it's pretty tough for us to fight for every scrap.
So another area that Coast Guard is just really getting into is data. The Coast Guard requires a centralized data management system and fully developed performance metrics in order for operational analysis to properly exploit data to optimize operations. Given the current state of the Coast Guard's data ecosystem, what is the best approach to enable a data-driven workforce?
Yeah, so our Commandant's intent and our Coast Guard strategy, really 3 lines of efforts, right? Transform our workforce, sharpen our competitive edge, and enhance mission excellence. All of those rely on better use of data and data-driven decisions, particularly our workforce, right? We need to better understand how our workforce behaves and why, and then really be able to understand readiness. So we are getting after data. It's a big elephant to eat, and a lot of you out here are helping us eat that elephant. I mean, when you ask, how are we going to do? We stood up our Office of Data and Analytics. We are working on an integrated data environment, but every expert that we consult with says the only way to get after this is through what they call relentless incrementalism. And in our case, that means building use cases, getting the data associated with that use case into an IDE, proving the concept, and then rinse and repeat. And we are starting to do that through a couple operational use cases around object detection, particularly right now in the South Florida Straits, where we have historic migrations going on, where we can integrate sensors from a number of different platforms and use AI to help us determine where we should send our forces. We're doing that through some HR use cases that are associated with being able to combine data about you or a person from your medical record, with your training record, with your official military files, so we can truly understand a person in an integrated way. And there's another number of other use cases, but that's how we're getting after it. Relentless incrementalism. We are absolutely behind when it comes to how we use our data, and it's absolutely critical to our future success, so we're focused hard on that.
So some people might not envision that mission support is that big of a deal. Everybody gets, they see these big operations, and the operational community always gets most of the attention. Well, I'm going to give you a few things that our Admiral here faces. The unpredictability and severity of climate change is having a detrimental impact on Coast Guard infrastructure, complicated by the fact that over 60% of shore assets already exceed the designated service life, and approximately 80% are located in a flood zone. The Government Accountability Office reported in late 2021 that at least $2.6 billion was needed to address the Coast Guard's backlog for shore infrastructure maintenance and recapitalization projects. On another side, inflation and supply chain shortages are driving up prices on current acquisitions and support activities. So what is your strategy to balance the needs across all those operations, acquisitions, and support activities that you're in charge of in face of the inflation and fiscal constraints?
Wow, that's a heck of a question. But I would start by saying that, thinking about the Coast Guard in terms of mission support and mission execution is an organizational construct. It's not an operational construct. Operationally, there's no line. You can't do one without the other. And so I think as a service, we understand that any operation requires full integration with what we call mission support. And I think we've done a really good job, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years, maturing our understanding of that. There is no question there are a lot of demands in the Coast Guard. We have the largest physical plant, the most real assets of any agency outside of the Department of Defense. And we're not in the Department of Defense, and we're not budgeted like the Department of Defense, and we don't have the same authorities that the Department of Defense has. So we're going after some more of those authorities that will help us do things like manage life cycle of C5I better with multi-year money, et cetera. We have been telling the nation that you need a ready Coast Guard, and over the last decade that has meant recapitalization of our fleet that floats and flies. We are now reminding people that every single one of those missions starts at a shore installation, and we are either building or operating the fleet of the future. We need to turn our focus to the infrastructure that supports that fleet. The good news is that we've gotten more shore infrastructure money over the course of the last 3 budget years than we did in the entire 15 years before that combined. That's great news. My concern is our ability to actually execute on that money, particularly given our limited civil engineering capacity, but we're getting after that as well. You asked me about how do you balance those? I think we're struggling to figure that out still. We built a fleet that's very expensive to operate and maintain, and they need home ports. So we're working with our stakeholders on the Hill to explain our needs, and they're helping us with really, really strong budgets. Master Chief, any thoughts on that?
So this one hopefully is a little easier for you and a little closer to home because it's by the Coast Guard Academy, of which of course you're a graduate. So oversight of the Academy falls under your Deputy for Personnel Readiness. We know that the cadets who come out of the Academy are some of the brightest of their generation with their research, often solving world problems and generating provisional patents. But again, in that whole competition area where there's competition for students and faculty is fierce. What is your plan to ensure that the Coast Guard Academy remains one of the top-ranked schools in the country when there's so few people there that we're trying to compete for?
Yeah, so the Coast Guard Academy itself is critical to our service because it is the source for all of our officers, not just our Coast Guard Academy graduates. It's the home of our Officer Candidate School and our Direct Commission Officer School. So the physical infrastructure at the Coast Guard Academy supports the entire officer corps and really needs to be a focus. The Commandant is on the verge of signing a new strategic vision for the Coast Guard Academy that outlines really 3 lines of effort. The first is to ensure we continue to produce leaders of character for our service who are well prepared to get into the service and lead in the future. The second is to leverage the Coast Guard Academy as an asset for our service and for our department just based on the capacity, intellectual capacity, research capacity that's there, in ways that help us prepare for problems in the future, that we haven't yet realized. And they are doing that. That is where we will make the biggest advancements in AI and in cyber. It will be at our Coast Guard Academy. And then the third focus of the Commandant's strategic vision is to make sure the Academy itself is ready for the future, and that's where we have to get after the physical infrastructure, most of which was constructed in 1939. Our classrooms, our laboratories do not stack up against most high schools. And we recently have had some pretty high-level visitors to the Academy who have recognized that as well. And so I think at the highest levels of the department and within the White House, we're getting some real support to make sure that we keep the Coast Guard Academy a high-quality educational institution that it is. Although I'm not sure the Master Chief would agree with me on that one. Yeah, I do have to. I mean, the same is true of the infrastructure we bring in all of our enlisted folks at Cape May. It also needs to be recapitalized, and we have gotten some money to build new barracks, but we do not have a world-class training facility there, and we definitely need to invest in Cape May as well.
So we've been talking about a lot of areas where we need change. In the Coast Guard strategy, Admiral Fagan has repeatedly talked about the need for a culture of innovation among the workforce to move the Coast Guard forward. You yourself have said that we are an organization that does not accept the status quo. How do you create a culture of innovation and motivate the workforce and senior leaders to be open in new ways, in addition to their primary duties? What does this innovation culture look like on a daily basis, and what are some ways in which you see mission support embracing innovation?
Yeah, so I believe the Coast Guard, by our very nature, is very innovative. Our workforce, incredibly innovative. Maybe for the wrong reasons, right? Maybe because they constantly have to find workarounds, whether it's because a system is not performing the way it should. I can think of financial management system examples. Everywhere that we go around the field, we find coasties who are keeping the service operating despite our best efforts to shut it down. So I think we are inherently innovative, right? I think you build that culture by allowing people to experiment, by doing fast prototyping, learning quickly, and then rinsing and repeating. And again, we do that a lot in the field. We are definitely focused on ensuring that we continue to foster innovation. I'd like to be able to foster innovation by providing tools. For example, we talked about data. Once we get our data and those tools in the hands of our workforce, they will do things with that that we can't even imagine. I know that because we see it every day. So we will continue to provide them the tools that allow them to innovate, but this workforce innovates every day just to keep our service running and doing what we do. Master Chief, I know you have some thoughts on that.
Thank you, sir. And I couldn't agree with you more. We innovate to survive or just to get by. It'd be cool to innovate, to focus all that energy kind of on future endeavors, right? I think it was what Gretzky said, he wants to skate to where the puck is going to be. We continue to skate where the puck is. So to have the freedom to actually innovate for the future, play more of a longer game than a short game, I think that's where we want to be. But yeah, we have some incredible people that do some incredible stuff every day that we take for granted, and we shouldn't, because it's going to pay dividends in the long run once we have that freedom and flexibility to think more longer term.
So the core principles that you've set for mission support are to be responsive, innovative, and integrated. And you touched on integrated a little bit before, but we're going to ask you to talk about that, because you've really been emphasizing integration across the service to work hand in glove with the operational community. So tell us how you plan to achieve that end, and you could provide some insights on how mission support and operations work together.
Sure. So when we talk about integration within mission support, we're talking about providing one-stop shopping for our operational partners, so that the XO on a ship does not have to touch base with 15 or 20 different elements of the mission support enterprise. Right now, an XO has got to talk with somebody from a training center about training, and from a product line about certain aspects of their ship's maintenance, about another product line for the C5I. you know, and so on and so for someone else for medical care. I want to integrate that. I want to make sure that we are all aware of what service we're providing to whom, when, so they're not all showing up at the brow at the same time, for example. And I'm just using an example that's associated with a cutter, but it's across the support services that we provide. And so we have teams that are looking really hard at integration. We have a prototype going on right now for a 270 down in Portsmouth, where we provided a mission support integrator to that XO for their pre-deployment workup, and then they will have a mission support integrator while they're underway. We'll learn from that, and then we'll grow that concept. I'm also working really hard to get the resources to stand up a mission support operations center, so that 24/7 we can understand the needs of the operational units and work to integrate, you know, the provision of those services to those units. So that's what we mean when we're talking about integration in the mission support world, and there's some exciting work going on there.
So this is something that many of our audience would probably be interested in. What's the best way for industry to engage with the Coast Guard, and what are some current areas of focus where they can add value?
Yeah, well, obviously, this is a great way for industry to engage with the Coast Guard, and if you check out the schedule over there, we're going to be talking about our CMP by Better Revolution, which is our effort to do contracting and procurement more efficiently, effectively, with more category management, more strategic sourcing. We can definitely use your help on that. If you scan the QR code that's somewhere around here, there's a survey from our CMP task force that will allow you to give us feedback and help us make sure that we are taking advantage of all the industry has to offer. I mentioned a couple areas that we're really focused on. Data integration, data ingestion, IDEs, AI, that's a huge focus for us right now. Everything that has to do with better lifecycle management for technology and C5I systems is a real focus for us now. And pretty much if the Navy is looking at it, we're going to be looking at it. So I would encourage you to keep us informed of what you're doing for your other customers, because that's very useful to me.
Okay, so you've talked about a lot of different challenges that you have. So is there something that you haven't spoken about that you consider a big challenge for mission support?
I mean, we have talked about the biggest challenge, right, which is our workforce and our workforce gaps. So we talked about recruiting, but retention is even more important. And the Coast Guard has very good retention. Typically, we have about a 10.5% attrition from our enlisted workforce. That's attrition for all reasons. Retirements, voluntary separations, involuntary separations, movement from the enlisted ranks to the officer rank. 10.5% is typical, which is really good for any of the services. Right now it's creeping up to around 13%. So what keeps me up at night is, am I doing everything, are we doing everything we can to support our workforce in a way that makes it easier for them to stay? That's what the Commandant means when she says transform our workforce. She's talking about talent management system that is more flexible, predictable, transparent, and provides better support to our members and their families. That's where I'm focused, and that has so much involved with it. Better training and learning opportunities, better access to health care, better access to housing and child care, leadership, climate, all those things that lead to that higher retention. Master Chief, your thoughts on our greatest challenges?
Yes, sir. Just to piggyback on what you were talking about, as far as something we both heard the Commandant say time and time again, is we recruit members, but we retain families. So getting after all that support, right, the world-class support that we're trying to work on, to make sure that our families are taken care of, that's, I think, will go a long way to help our folks want to stay and want to stay longer.
You've been real open in talking about the challenges that the Coast Guard faces, but we've got this great workforce is doing a wonderful job each and every day. So do you have a couple of the big successes that you want to highlight for us?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because there is so much goodness going on in the Coast Guard, and thanks to our workforce. I mean, as I already mentioned, we are fielding world-class ships and boats and aircraft that are very, very capable. I mean, you need to look no further than South Florida. We're saving thousands of lives every week down there to know that the Coast Guard is on duty and doing great things. We are bringing new technologies to bear. We're upgrading all of our C5I systems. We have our 47-foot motor lifeboats right now in a service life extension program. What a great deal that is for taxpayers. For about a very small price of a recap price, we're going to get another 15, 20 years out of those vessels. And the examples are just kind of endless in that regard. So there are a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of great goodness going on. Master Chief, your thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. So some examples are some of the innovation practices from our incredible workforce as we had to roll out financial management systems, as we change our electronic records, and the training, the job aids, the guides that a lot of our folks are creating on the fly. We're not contracting that work out. They're doing everything's OJT, and then as they figure it out, they're making it better for everybody else by creating an how-to. Right, so that kind of crowdsourcing mentality, there's probably no better return on investment than coastings just getting after it every day.
Yeah, I'll just add, right now in Galveston, Texas, at our fish school, you can put on a pair of goggles and you can walk through different types of fishing vessels so that you can become familiar with the equipment and the configuration. It won't be long before our cutter crews will pull up alongside a vessel that they're going to board. They're going to put on goggles right before they do that boarding. They're going to walk through that ship. That's training delivered exactly when you need it, tailored to your mission, and we are there. And so a lot of great things. I mean, one of the greatest strengths of our service is that we are constantly striving to improve, and that's certainly the case within the mission support world. And we just got great leaders and great innovators doing that every day.
So before we move on to questions, is there anything else that you want to bring up? Your legacy as a DCMS or anything that you want to mention before we go to the audience?
Yeah, so the Master Chief and I are not interested in legacies, but we are thrilled to be on a team that's doing important and impactful work that will shape our service for decades to come. And that's certainly what we're doing, as those who came before us did. And it's exciting to be here, as I said, modernizing our fleet, getting after our shore infrastructure problem, modernizing our talent management policies, processes, systems, and getting after data in a way that will set us up for future success. For me, that's what's so exciting. I want to hear about the Master Chief's legacy, though.
Well, that's simple, sir. Leave it better than I found it. That's it.
I'd say maybe your service life as long as some of our cutters are.
I will, for the record, I was on a cutter the other day that's older than me, so, and still working.
Still working. All right, we're going to go for questions now.
Questions for the Admiral or CMC Pereira? Yes, sir.
Scott Tosley, sir. A question I asked your Commandant many months back. Most of the other services use a lot of reservists, guard, all sorts of part-time resources, if you will. How does the Coast Guard approach that, and what are you looking to expand or improve in the world of reserve or part-time support, part-time participants in the Coast Guard?
Ask the Commandant, what'd she say? Hey, I will tell you the Coast Guard uses a higher percentage of a reserve every year than any service, like way higher. So much so that we're really concerned that when we need to surge them, they'll be burned out. 50% of our force is activated in most years. And right now, we're bringing on reserves to fill our active duty workforce gaps, and we have gaps in our reserve force as well. So that's a very tricky balance. We need our reserve force for contingency response. We need our reserve force to augment our active duty force, particularly right now. So we are really, really walking a fine line. But there's no other service that uses their reserves more than the U.S. Coast Guard.
Other question?
Hi, this is Valerie Kelly from Battelle. What's the appetite of the U.S. Coast Guard to use live, immersive virtual training to bring on some of your new technologies and capabilities and keep your competencies and training, in-house and stored away, so on and so forth? Anything like that y'all are interested in?
Absolutely. We have an initiative that we call Modern Ready Learning. It's all about delivering the learning that you need when you need it, tailored to you and to your mission and wherever you are, right? Wherever you are. That means If you're on a ship in Bering Sea and you get repurposed to the South China Sea, I want to be able to project onto that ship and provide you the learning opportunities that you need to get ready for that new mission. That looks like all sorts of different tools, and certainly immersive learning, anything that we can do to increase our ability to maintain recency, proficiency, all those things are what we're very, very interested, and we have an initiative just focused on that.
Any other questions?
Pete Van Ness, Paraton, retired Coast Guard. So we talk a lot about acquisition and contracting and the relationships between the Coast Guard and industry that have to do with financial transactions. What can industry do that has nothing to do with a contract, nothing to do with a financial transaction to help the Coast Guard workforce? What can we do outside of our professional relationship that deals with money to help?
All right, where are the lawyers in this room? So, look, bring us your young. Tell our story. I mean, you those of you who work with the Coast Guard know our story, and I mean, you know it's an attractive mission, it's an attractive culture, it's a great workforce, you know, to work with every day. We need better brand recognition, and to the extent that you can help us with that, you will help our workforce. So I appreciate that, and we won't have any financial exchanges there.
Any other questions? We have like a minute left. All right, sir, CMC, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
All right, thanks.